Rashomon was introduced to the world in 1950, becoming an overnight sensation at film festivals and art house movie theaters with its compelling characters, beautiful cinematography, and an unconventional storytelling. It was awarded by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science for Best Foreign Film and made the name of the director, 40-year-old Akira Kurosawa, recognizable all over the world that grew only larger with each new film he created until he became a giant in the cinematic world. The film tells the story of a mystery, the death of a man and the rape of his wife in broad daylight in the middle of the woods. For the entirety of the film, 4 people give very different testimonies about what happened. The fierce bandit Tajumaru, played by legendary Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune. The frail and beautiful wife of the dead man, played by Machiko Kiyo. The dead man himself, spoken to a medium, played by Masayuki Mori. And the woodcutter who first discovered the crime scene, played by Kurosawa regular and one of my favorite actors, Takashi Shimura. I have heard about this film for a long time, often as cited as one of those movies that every film lover needs to watch. By the time I had the chance to view it myself, I was already familiar with Akira Kurosawa, having seen some of his samurai epics such as Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and Ran, loving them with all of my heart. I didn't really know much about what the film is about, but I knew that it was something that I not only wanted to see, but needed to see. So on a whim, I brought the Criterion Collection edition of it the first chance I got and watched it. By the time I finished it, I was stunned. This film just barely makes the 90-minute runtime, and yet this says more about human nature than any other film I've seen. Plenty of them that are twice as long as this movie. With the murder mystery as the basis of the story, it uses it to explore the motivations and personalities of the people who told their story the way they did. This was done in an ingenious way as they each tell their version by talking to the camera who are in place of the officials, but it's made to look as if they're talking to us, the audience. It leaves us to shift to the lies to discover the real truth of what happened, but instead, we experience some of humanity's failings. Through a series of flashbacks, each of the participants is portrayed as they are given to us. In some versions, the bandit is seen as cruel but reluctant in some aspects such as the act of murdering the man, while the woman is shown as either resisting or accepting the bandit's sexual advancement, while demanding that the 2 men must fight to the death in order for her to preserve her honor. Even the dead man, who had nothing to lose, shows signs of vanity with his versions of the events, as with the bandit and the woman who are trying to justify their actions or just lying to themselves in order to protect their ego by showing false bravado or innocence. It wouldn't be until the 4th version of the story where it is told by an eyewitness who gave us a more objective view where we see how it really went down, and that is where I got what the movie is all about. This is one of those movies that needs to be seen more than once, and with a short runtime is very doable, but it's more than just figuring out what really happened, and that's just part of the fun. Watching this each time, I would find myself trying to understand why would each of them would lie about what happened, and it's obvious they weren't doing it to protect themselves from a conviction. I imagine that living in that time period of feudal Japan does play a role to the story because it does look at issues such as how women are portrayed in society, especially ones that were sexually abused. So with personal honor and pride at stake, each person would definitely lie in order to make them feel like they are the ones in the right, romanticizing the whole thing in order to make themselves look good for us as to not to judge them too harshly of their actions and to even sympathizing with them. Even so, they are clearly recognizably human because I would get so wrapped up in the whole narrative of it all and never see them as horrible people because we as humans are guilty of having the same vanity and are not always honest with ourselves while being judgmental of others of their failings that we are guilty of ourselves, a very hypocritical practice. And even when we get to the bottom of the whole matter, there still is that nagging feeling in the back of my head that even that isn't the complete truth. It's still one perspective that could still be manipulative by one's personality and outlook on life, and as countless studies has shown, human memory isn't as reliable as we thought it is. It changes over time and we forget certain things, either by accident or on purpose. I don't know if that was a director's intention or not to make us doubt about it, but it certainly does add complexity to the whole thing, and I have noticed some subtle hints in my recent viewing that points to that there is more to than what is given, and that makes this a very rewatchable movie. The performances of each of the characters really do help sell this film. While there is plenty of dialogue, there is enough screen time where we can just sit and watch the facial expressions, and they are just exquisite to watch. The way that the camera moves and the editing with the flashback gives it the right look and pacing that this story needs. A beautiful setting in the woods where the camera focuses on the characters' movements and expressions while telling a condensed but fulfilling story. Based on what I've said, I think I've sold my feelings about this film. While I have seen films that tell this kind of story, it's only because they were influenced by this movie. And even then, I don't think I've ever seen a movie like this where it explores human nature as bold and piercing as this movie does. And while it has a lot to say about the failings of human beings, it still retains that hope of humanity's bright future. I love this film very, very much for what it wanted to do, as well as how entertaining it is, drawing me into the narrative and having me pick my brain to figure out not only the murder mystery, but the biggest mystery of all, ourselves. It is one of those very rare films that is the perfect example of what cinema is and can be, and it's something that I love to revisit again and again.